Welcome to KBS World Radio. You're now tuned in to Korea 24's Korea Book Club, where we explore the world of Korean literature. This is our weekend replay edition, playing back our book segment from Wednesday's show. We hope you enjoy it. I'm your host, Kwon Jang-woo. Joining us in the studio now is our literary critic Barry Welsh with another work for us to discover. Barry, hello. It's good to see you again.
Yes, great to be back.
Okay, so what do you have in store for us this week?
So we're reviewing a short story called Spring Afternoon, Three Widows. The Korean title is Bomna Ohu Kwabu Set, and it's by Jeong Ji-a, and translated by Brendan MacHale and Kim Yoon-kyung. And the story was first published in Korean in a collection of Jeong's short stories called Spring Light back in 2008. And then the English translation was originally published in the Korea Times newspaper in 2010, and then it was published again a couple of years later as book number 63 in the Asia Publishers Modern Korean Literature series. And Jeong has a very interesting bio. She's a very celebrated writer in Korea. She debuted in 1990 at the age of 25 with a very controversial story at the time, or at least it was controversial at the time, called Daughter of the Partisan. And that story was actually banned for several years. And then around that time, or shortly after that time, she was also briefly a wanted criminal for participating in sort of a socialist labour movement magazine and sort of being involved in activism. And since then, however, she's published several short story collections. She's won several of the literary awards here, including the Hanmu Sok Literary Award. And recently, she's published a best-selling novel called Father's Liberation Diary. Today's story is one of only a few that Jeong has available for English readers in English translation, and it's a deceptively simple story that actually asks quite profound questions about life in Korea in the 20th century.
Right, so she sounds like a figure who has ruffled a few feathers in her time, to say the least. So introduce the story for us then. What is the deceptively simple story Jeong tells in Spring Afternoon, Three Widows?
Right, so the story, such as it is, takes place over the course of the titular spring afternoon as two older women, they live in the same neighbourhood, they decide to go and visit their close childhood friend. Now in their 80s, the three women, they've been, lifelong friends, and their lives have been intertwined in various ways over the decades. And now that their husbands are all dead and their children are, they're adults and mostly living elsewhere, they find they only have each other left to rely on. And their names, or the names that they use for each other, are Aiko, Haruko, and Sadako. And Aiko explains the reason for this. She says they had been in the same class in the town's only elementary school. They used Japanese names then, and those names were still more familiar to them. She was Jeong Ji-a, but to her friends, she was Prissy Aiko. And so as Aiko and Haruko visit their friend, Aiko reflects on this several decades-long friendship, their marriages that they've had, the various relationships they've had with men, their children, who've all grown up, and what they've sacrificed for their children, as well, and the role of ideology in their lives, or at least in one of their lives. So one of the three of them has primarily devoted herself to her children. Another had this very warm and tender relationship with her husband, and that was the main focus of her life. And the third, her life was dedicated to ideology, and all have been affected and suffered in different ways. And so, what is the role the story asks of these things in our life? Family, children, ideology, political ideology, in our lives, and what did these women learn from these things over their long lives?
It's interesting. So already, even with their names, that tells us a lot, that they lived through the Japanese colonial period when Koreans were forced to study and learn Japanese and adopt Japanese names. So tell us more then. What aspects of 20th century Korea is Chung commenting on in this story?
Right, yes. So just exactly like you said, that's one of the things that she's talking about. So there's, it seems like it's a simple story. Not much actually happens, but there are several things happening in the story. So these three women, they've forged this bond of friendship that transcended, overcame, outlasted the Japanese, colonization, and even if they can't shake this habit of using these sort of imposed Japanese names from their school days, and then similarly their friendship and the day-to-day details of their lives and their inner lives have also outlasted, important and has significant historical events from Korea's modern history. So Sadako, for example, she joined a communist political group with her husband, and for a time they had to flee to the mountains, and when they returned they were imprisoned for years, and even after release they were sort of harassed and persecuted by officials and policemen and so on. And when her husband died before her, she started to think, what worth was there to be found in this ideology that she devoted her life to? And it's quite a tragic conclusion, this realization that she has that she might have squandered her life on a fantasy that won't be realized.
Right, so I guess that is quite tragic, something that this is how she feels. What about family, marriage, and children? As we said, all these characters, they were married, had kids. Have these things provided fulfillment for any of these three widows in the story?
Right. So again, we see things here that are uncomfortable. So Aiko, for example, so she feels like she squandered her youth on a husband who had affairs and who didn't really show her any warmth, and eventually left her for a mistress, and this caused her embarrassment and humiliation within her community. And furthermore, despite desiring, love and affection, she feels that she couldn't pursue other relationships because she didn't want to embarrass her children. She was worried about how they'd perceive her and how she'd be perceived in the community. And she says the only thing holding Aiko back from running to a man was her children's grip on her skirts. And so she has this disappointment in her life. And then Haruko's husband, he died. She did have this warm and loving relationship with her husband, but he died early, and so she didn't get to spend her old age with this man that she loved. And then Sadako as well never feels that she didn't experience genuine affection from a man throughout her life. And as for their children, although maybe they might be happy for some of them, they've all flown the coop. They've all left home, obviously. They're adult children now, and most of them have moved away, and some are disappointments or simply absent, or they just don't understand their life decisions. And at one point, Aiko remembers the hours and the days and the months and just this accumulated time over her lifetime of preparing food and making different types of kimchi to send to her children, when they were studying for things or pursuing their goals. And she, reflects on how their lives were just consumed by this effort to provide for children who are now distant and perhaps a little ungrateful even. And, Chong, she offers this view of lives spent dedicated to things, whether husbands or a political perspective to children, and shows the potential tragedy that can accompany each of these aspects of life.
Well, it sounds like a striking story to seek out. Once again, it's called Spring Afternoon, Three Widows by Jeong Ji-a, and that was our pick for Korea Book Club this week. Barry, thank you for bringing us that book, and we look forward to the next one already. Take care.
Okay, take care.